Good evening, everyone. I believe we have people joining the webinar, but we'll start. Thanks for being here. My name is Marina Godoy. I'm the Global Director of Marketing. Dr. Travis White will be conducting this webinar. So let's go to the next slide, please, just to present some of the ground rules and the agenda. So this webinar will be touching different topics very pertaining for this important season. I believe globally we are in calving season, which is quite important for us. We're facing weather challenges in different geographics. So we're going to try to cover some of the topics this evening. So at the end, we'll have, we're going to offer actually some time after different topics. The few topics we're going to touch on. Travis is going to answer your questions. So we're going to dedicate some time to answer that. And just like to give you a little bit of the format of the webinar. If you can go to the next slide, please. So the Q&A will be open to type questions, and our speakers will answer at the end of each subject. We will try to answer all your questions after each topic and during the Q&A portion. So please refer to the Q&A section at the bottom of the menu bar. We set the mics to be muted to keep distractions at minimum. And every time you see this image, the question mark, we will be sending a poll to all attendees. So again, this is a C credits event. So we're going to offer credits after this webinar. You can scan the QR code, take a picture, so you will be able to complete a form with and enter your information in the fields. SCCL will submit each attendee to the CE broker. And after the training, make sure you are registered at cebroker.com to receive your RAISE approved credits. Today's date, name, license number, practicing state, email, and phone number.
And we'll at the end we'll put that QR code up again during the Q&A.
Absolutely. Yeah, during the session, we're going to try to actually 2-3 times during this session, you're going to see the QR code, so please scan it. And additional to the topics that Dr. White is going to cover, SCCL offers important tools that I believe they're useful for you to know and understand. So we added a few videos that will help you to download some of the SCCL app, for instance, or how to mix colostrum. So we're trying to do this very interactive. So please stay tuned. So Travis, I'll pass that to you.
Right. Great. Yeah, tonight we're doing things a little bit different this time. I mean, if you've joined any of our webinars in the past, they've been typically 3 topics, several hours long. We're trying to do this in just one topic tonight, and hopefully be done within the hour here so that we're not taking up as much time, and we're experimenting a little bit to see how these go. But tonight we're going to talk about optimizing colostrum management through enrichment. But by way of introduction, I'm Dr. Travis White, grew up in Ashton, Idaho on a cow-calf operation about 8 miles from Yellowstone National Park. When I graduated high school, I actually became a pipe fitter out in the oil field in Wyoming. Spent several years out there and would, work 410s in the oil field and then rodeo on the weekends. And then after getting married and having kids and some career-ending injuries, decided it was time to go to college. Went to Utah State University for undergraduate and then up to Washington State University to do my veterinary degree. When I graduated vet school, I then opened a private practice in Wessington Springs, South Dakota. It was about 95% cow-calf, with a big portion of that being club calf. So I do about 350 C-sections a year during, this would be my big time of calving right now. I'd be living at the clinic and doing upwards of 12 to 15 C-sections every day. I sold that practice and went to Transova Genetics, where for 4 years I led and developed their training division, which today is Transova University, where We educated veterinarians, both internal and external, in all aspects of advanced reproduction. So, in vitro fertilization and embryo transfer. We'd have herdsmen that would come and learn to do embryo transfer as well. So we worked with our clients as well as veterinarians to provide the training that they needed on farm to be able to handle embryos. And then from there was recruited to SCCL to lead their tech service division, where I now serve as director of veterinary technical services and provide on-farm consulting and education throughout the world for Saskatoon Colostrum Company. But at the end of the day, this is really who I am. I've got 5 daughters. I live in what I consider one of the most beautiful places on earth. I'm an avid fly fisherman or an outdoorsman and a very amateur musician. But it's important that we all have passions in life outside of our career, and we don't let our career define us. And that's really what defines me, as being a husband and a father, a son, a brother, and having hobbies outside of my career. But tonight we're going to talk about managing variable maternal colostrum. So what is the goal for colostrum quality? This is where one of those polls will pop. So the majority, about 62%, answered greater than 50 grams per liter, which is the correct answer. We want to use colostrum that is greater than 50 grams per liter of IgG. And the reason that is because, we're targeting a certain mass of immunoglobulin in the first day of life. And in order to hit that mass, we have to have a certain quality of colostrum. So when we look at colostrum quality, and this is kind of an older study, probably needs to be repeated at some point, but when we look at the colostrum that's collected on farm, about 77% of that colostrum comes in that good quality, or over 50 grams per liter. And then we have, about 30% that come in poor and intermediate. So it's not all of the colostrum that's made on farm that is of low quality. The majority of it is good quality above that 50 grams per liter. But what do we do with this poor quality and intermediate quality colostrum? Is there anything we can do with that, or is it just something that we have to dump down the drain? Well, that's where this enrichment of maternal colostrum comes into account. So here recently, the NAHMS, National Animal Health Monitoring System, proposed some new category levels when we start looking at calf health. So we want 40% of our calves to be in the excellent passive transfer category, and then 30% good and 20% fair. But the only way to do that is by feeding, again, and we'll talk a little bit more about this as we move on, but is by feeding a certain mass of IgG. And that mass of IgG is 300 grams in the first 6 to 8 hours of life to achieve this excellent transfer level. Now, we're going to talk about some strategies of how we can get to that 300 grams. But before we do that, there's another poll question here. So yeah, the majority answered no. That's the correct answer. we can't look at colostrum and use color or viscosity or thickness or anything like that to determine the quality of the colostrum. Actually, some of the best quality or best looking colostrum we get from Scotland, and it is bright yellow and it's thick and it's just beautiful colostrum, but it actually comes in at a fairly low quality. And the reason that is you think about cattle in Scotland and they are consuming grass, so a lot of the it's going to change the color of that colostrum to more of a yellow color. But we can't use color, we can't use thickness, we can't use any physical attributes of the colostrum to estimate the quality of the colostrum. Really, the only way that we can measure colostrum is by testing it. So there's a couple of ways to test it. Probably the most common is this Brix refractometer. And so we put a drop of colostrum and it's going to give us a reading as far as a Brix percentage. And then that Brix percentage over time, we've been able to make some correlations. So here's another poll question. Is Brix an accurate measurement of antibodies in maternal colostrum? Oh, so about pretty even, 60% and 40%. And this is kind of a trick question, right? So Brix is the best cow side on farm measurement that we have to measure antibodies. Unfortunately, it's not a direct measurement. So we've made some correlations, right? And as you can see by this scatter plot, that the accuracy of this estimation is only about 70%. So again, when we're looking at what they consider good quality colostrum at a 22 Brix, it comes in at 50 grams per liter of IgG. But there's often times where colostrum is more potent than that based on the Brix reading, and there's times when it's less potent than that. So again, it's a correlation, but it's the best on-farm tool that we have to measure colostrum quality. Just like when we look at serum total proteins, we've done similar studies to make correlations again. And so this is just a scatter plot looking at serum total proteins and how that would correlate as well. And again, if we're talking, this getting over 300 grams of IgG into a calf, then how is that going to show up on a serum total protein where they're going to have to be up here into this, 6.0 and higher, about a 6.1. And so you're going to have somewhere in that 25 grams of immunoglobulin within the serum of the calf to be able to achieve that excellent passive transfer status. Now, here is a short video that we have. These are some resources that are available on our website for training purposes that we just wanted to share with you.
Head Start Dairy learns a key point in measuring success.
Anna, the calves look great.
Thanks, Doc. We've been testing for serum total protein with a refractometer, and our calves are much healthier. But they're testing lower after using SCCL colostrum. What's going on?
That's because serum total protein tests only provide an estimate of the actual level of IgG absorbed, and IgG is only a fraction of the total proteins found. The true test for passive transfer is done only by a laboratory test called radial immunodiffusion, or RID. And measuring STP with a refractometer can vary widely between different colostrum products.
So STP tests should only be used to get a general evaluation of our maternal colostrum program, and should never be used to evaluate individual calves or compare colostrum products.
You've got it, Anna, and you've got healthy calves.
That's the best measure of success.
And so, just like with the Brix measurement and serum total proteins, both of those are an estimate. And we can use this radial immunodiffusion test to test both colostrum or serum to look at how calf health is doing. And so when we look at serum total proteins, the reason there's less accuracy on a serum total protein or refractometer test is because when we look at the protein fraction, about 7% of the fluid in the plasma is proteins, and of that, the majority of it is albumin, and then we have some immunoglobulin, and then a very small portion is fibrinogen. And if this albumin fraction, think of albumin kind of as the bully on the street. It's a large globular protein that has a much bigger impact on the refraction of light. So if albumin changes much, it has a much bigger impact on the serum total protein. Whereas if globulins move, rise or fall, they don't have as big of impact on refracting light. So when we look at, maternal colostrum, like the video said, if you're feeding significant amounts of powder, you may notice that the serum total protein is low, and that's because dried powdered colostrum is very low in albumin compared to fresh maternal colostrum. And so you may have a lower serum total protein, but if you run an RID test, you actually have higher IgG absorption than you do with maternal colostrum oftentimes. So what can we use? Again, this radial immunodiffusion testing. Serum total protein just tests all of the proteins in the serum, where RID actually tests for the true IgG. So here's a real world example. This is a farm where we started an enrichment program. And like I said, we want 40% of our calves in this excellent category. As you can see from the graph, we had 20% that were reaching excellent. We had about 50% that were good. Luckily, we had none that were failing. But the veterinarian contacted me and said, hey, the program isn't working, if you will. You told us we needed to have 40% of our calves in the excellent category. This was done on serum total protein. When we send those same samples off for our ID testing, we actually had 80% of the calves achieving excellent passive transfer, with only 20% good, and we had none in the fair and failure category. So as you can see, if we're having questions, if we're using powdered colostrum in any meaningful fashion, and we have questions about the results we're getting on serum total proteins, we can always do this RID testing. And that's a free service that we offer to you guys, free of charge. You can send samples in to us anytime, and we'll test those for you. We're actually the national laboratory for the USDA and for the Canadian CFIA. And so you're welcome to send those samples in. Just reach out and we can get you an accession form and instructions on how to collect and submit those samples. So as we talk about enrichment, so the idea behind enrichment is feeding a colostrum product to enhance the Brix level of the maternal colostrum. So why would I want to enrich? Well, farms are already using their maternal colostrum, we want them to maximize the use of that. We want them to use as much of that free, quote unquote, free product that they have. They already have comfort in using this product, their maternal colostrum. And again, this is just a way for us to add IgG concentration to their own maternal colostrum so that we can use every drop of maternal colostrum that's produced on farm. So here's another poll question. I vaccinated my cow. Her colostrum now contains antibodies to all important calf hood disease challenges. False. Yeah. So the majority of the people voted for false. And that's true. She's going to have antibodies to those pathogens that we vaccinated her for. But she's going to have preference for those now that we vaccinated her, and she's not going to respond as heavily to other pathogens that she may come into contact in her environment. And so her colostrum is not going to contain antibodies to all the important calf foot diseases, just to those that we've told her immune system that she needs to respond to. Now, so that brings up another reason why we may want to enrich. Well, it really broadens our antibody spectrum. So if you look at colostrum, upwards of 50% of colostrum has no leukosis virus antibody at present. About 20% lack BVD antibodies. Crypto, 10% lack crypto. We even have some routinely that don't have any E. coli antibodies. But when we use powdered colostrum, in each batch of colostrum that we manufacture, there are 6,000 cows within each batch. And we have to submit samples for third-party testing to ensure that we have antibodies against all of the major pathogens. So you can rest assured that now, if I'm using some powdered colostrum, I have a more broad antibody spectrum that's going to provide more coverage than just me vaccinating the cow with a vaccine. One of the things that is concerning, and I think there's more research that needs to be done around this, but there was recently a beef research project done in Canada where they were looking at failure of passive transfer and kind of looking at the outcomes of failure of passive transfer. And there were two major things that came out of that, or actually three major things that came out of that paper. One was that if a calf fails passive transfer, they're about 18 and a half times more likely to die prior to weaning. And so the old research out of Clay Center, Nebraska showed that they were about 5.5 times more likely to die prior to weaning. But in this new study, they were much more likely to die if they didn't achieve passive transfer. The second thing that came out of this study was that if calves did not reach the excellent category, they were 9.5 times more likely to die than those that were kind of in the good and fair category. And there was really not much difference between good, fair, and failure. And so the new recommendation coming out of that research was, we need to strive for excellent on every calf. And the third thing that, again, this is where I think we need to have more research done, is that calves that received antibody or received colostrum that lacked BVD antibody, even though they were never exposed to BVD during the study, were about 9 times more likely to die than calves that received colostrum that had BVD antibody. So we don't know if there's something cross-protective going on. Is there something within the BVD antibody that's stimulating the immune system differently? We have no idea why that happened. But calves that received colostrum devoid of BVD antibody were much more likely to die than those that received BVD. So which parity is at greatest risk for producing poor quality colostrum? First calf heifers. Majority of people got that correct. Yes, first calf heifers are kind of notorious for producing low quality as well as low quantity. And so again, that gives us another reason why we may want to enrich colostrum, is if we have a lot of first calf heifers that are calving, we may have colostrum that's coming in at a lower quality, then we need to improve that. And so it's a very convenient program to follow. There's a simple protocol. It really does not increase your labor much at all. It's instant mix, so it goes into solution rapidly. Another reason we may want to enrich is for dystocia calves. So calves that are born via dystocia, whether that's an abnormal presentation, a hard pull, a C-section, their ability to absorb colostrum is reduced by about 35%. And so now, we've been talking about getting 300 grams of colostrum into a calf to ensure that they reach excellent passive transfer. Well, in these dystocia calves, we've got to get 300 grams in just so they achieve passive transfer. The other reason we may want to enrich, high value calves. So replacement heifers. Replacement heifers right now are extremely valuable. It's getting near impossible to go out and buy replacement heifers on the open market, for at least for any they're extremely expensive. They're only going to get more expensive as we breed more beef. And so the days of going out and buying replacement heifers and being able to supplement our heifers that way, I think is quickly becoming a thing of the past. These high market beef animals, especially beef crosses, are $800 in some locales. I was in Canada last week and they were saying that they're getting $1,300 to $1,500 Canadian for beef crosses up there. And then if we're doing any advanced repro like embryo or IVF, again, this may be an area where we want to enrich the colostrum that's going to those animals. Another reason to enrich is epigenetics. So if we're ensuring that calves achieve passive transfer, there's an epigenetic effect. And we'll talk about several of these epigenetic effects, but one of them is increased milk production. So calves that receive adequate amount of colostrum will produce somewhere around 2,600 kilograms more milk in their first and second lactation. They'll also breed, their time at first service will improve by about 30 days as well. So how do we go about doing it? It's pretty simple. We measure the bricks of the raw colostrum, and then we determine if we're going to replace it or enrich it. Now, we can actually go lower than 22. So we've been able to go down to 15 to 18, like really poor colostrum. And we've been able to add powder and bring that up to an adequate level of IgG so that we don't have to waste even that really poor colostrum. But so if we decide to enrich, then we go ahead and we determine how much powder we need to use. And this can be done a couple of ways. We do have a colostrum calculator app. So you would put in how much maternal colostrum you collected, what was the bricks, what is our goal, and then it will give you an amount to add to the colostrum. So you just search colostrum calculator in the App Store.
To determine how much colostrum powder you'll need to enrich your fresh maternal colostrum, you'll need SCCL's Colostrum Calculator app. Once you've downloaded and opened the app, use the settings on the bottom left corner to decide which measurement system you would prefer to use to measure your colostrum, imperial or metric, as well as the language you would like to use your app in, English, Spanish, Dutch, or Portuguese. Your app is now ready to use. The first step is adding the amount of fresh maternal colostrum you have using the measurement system you have chosen. Next, you'll be able to add the percentage bricks of fresh colostrum you have, which can be measured using a refractometer. The last step will be adding the percentage bricks you are trying to achieve with enrichment. Once 3 fields are completed, press Calculate. The app will then use this information to calculate how much powder is needed to enrich your maternal colostrum and achieve optimal results.
The other way we can do it is through a chart. So we can provide you with these charts. Again, this is on a per liter basis, but you would find the bricks. Say it came in at a 22. Our goal is it comes in at a 22. Our goal is to be at a 30 in the example that was given. And you would add 120 grams of powder per liter of maternal colostrum.
How to enrich maternal colostrum. Enrichment is adding colostrum powder directly into available maternal colostrum to improve the quality. Step 1. Get your supplies ready. You may also need an extra pail of hot water to create a water bath for warming up the maternal colostrum. Step 2. Collect your clean maternal colostrum into a bucket. Ideally, colostrum should be collected as soon as possible after birth. Step 3. Take the temperature of the colostrum. It should be between 43 to 49 degrees Celsius or 110 to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Do not heat above this temperature. If necessary, warm up the colostrum in a hot water bath. Colostrum can be stirred periodically and hot water replaced if necessary. Step 4. Using a refractometer, text the Brix percentage of your maternal colostrum to estimate the quality. Step 5. Open the Colostrum Calculator app on your phone to determine the amount of powder that should be added to improve the quality of your maternal colostrum. Step 6. Weigh out the required amount of colostrum powder. Add the colostrum powder into maternal colostrum. Thoroughly mix colostrum with a whisk or electric mixer. Step 7. Pour into a bottle or tube feeder and feed quickly to give your calf the best start.
The other way that we can enrich colostrum is just coming up with a standard or a rip and go method. So I would say this has become more popular on some of our larger farms that don't want to necessarily weigh out how much colostrum they're going to add each time. And so what they do is they'll put in a benchmark of, say, 25, a Brix of 25. Anything over 25, they feed it as is. If it's under 25, then they add 350 grams of powdered colostrum. That will raise the Brix percentage by about 6 points. And this has become probably the most popular way. Again, especially on farms that are, say, over 1,000 cows, just to reduce on labor and time of calculating and weighing out powder. So in summary, we talked about enrichment today. Adding colostrum powder directly to the maternal colostrum to improve the quality. This is really when our Brix is low. There may be some scenarios like heat stress. So during the heat of the summer, our colostrum quality will dip by about 20%. And so we may have periods of the, times of the year where we need to enrich colostrum. Delayed milking. So just like the calf, we want to feed the calf in the first 2 hours of life. We get our best absorption. Well, we get our highest concentration of IgG in the first 2 hours of milking. So if we're only milking fresh cows twice a day, or in some cases once a day, the quality of that colostrum may suffer, and that, again, we may need to enrich in that scenario. Sometimes we have poor cow diets. We see some pretty poor colostrum in some of these pasture-based dairy systems down in, say, Georgia and whatnot. But there are some scenarios where diet can affect the colostrum quality as well. And then again, we're looking to enrich to at least a 25 Brix. The higher, the better. And you can use one of the methods that was outlined in the presentation to achieve that. We did want to let you know of our next upcoming webinar. This one is going to be all in Spanish, done by Lucia Pizzoni and Isela, that both work for SCCL. Again, if you are interested in registering for that, we have the QR code here available. And then we'll continue to get some more information out on this. So if you have herdsmen, especially that could use some education, then this is a great opportunity for a Spanish webinar coming up.
Perfect. Thank you, Travis. And yeah, you guys can scan the QR code, but we're going to open the floor for questions. I already have one here, Travis.
Yeah.
For rip and go enrichment method, what did you say the amount of powder colostrum you should add to the maternal colostrum?
Yeah, so it's 350 grams per gallon of colostrum.
Okay, thank you. Then I have several questions in one message, but that's great. What data logic is behind your colostrum quality classification? Poor, adequate, good, and excellent, based on percentage Brix? Given until now, most literature still uses 21% or higher Brix or 50% grams IgG per liter.
Yeah, so the literature comes from the latest NOMS data, where they are recommending that calves get at least 300 grams of IgG. And so as we're looking at those different levels, so if we're going to feed 300 grams of IgG to a calf at traditional 22 Brix, we would have to feed 1.5 gallons of colostrum. Now, we can achieve that if we're doing two if we're doing 2 colostrum feedings, we can feed a gallon at birth, and then we can follow it up with a half gallon 6 to 8 hours later. And at 22 bricks, we've achieved that 300 grams. So it's going to depend a little bit on our feeding strategy. But what do we do with the Jersey calf that we can't fit that much volume into? Well, now we've got to have a much higher bricks to get to that 300 gram level, even if we're doing 2 feedings, because now we're only going to be able to feed, say, 3 liters in the first feeding and maybe a liter in the second feeding. So it definitely is going to depend on our feeding strategy. Now, you are going to see some recommendations coming out in the next year or so on volumes. So there's some pretty good research coming out of Wisconsin right now that is showing that we are overfeeding calves when we try to feed them a gallon of colostrum, and it's actually causing more detriment than good. And so I think in the next year or so, you're going to see some pretty strong recommendations that we shouldn't be feeding anything over 3 liters of colostrum in a first feeding, and it should be enriched to almost a 30 bricks. And so that's not research we are doing. That's research coming out of University of Wisconsin that's going to be looking at feeding lower volumes of a much higher quality colostrum moving forward.
Excellent. Eddie, could you please confirm if the enrichment guideline is based on the product that it has 14% of IgG?
Yes, it's the current recommendations are based on the 14%. You can use the higher percentages, and again, you'll get more IgGs in that volume, but the current recommendations are based on the 14%.
Yeah, and I think the third question, it might be related to what you just mentioned, to new studies they're coming out. Studies of the U of Guelph indicate that enrichment is beneficial with colostrum under 50 grams per liter, but not higher than that. Not higher than that, sorry. Why your guidelines recommend enrichment colostrum over 22% bricks or even 25% bricks?
Yeah, so the University of Guelph study, it showed that there's benefit from going from poor quality or under 22 bricks up to excellent. There was a benefit from that, but there's not a benefit going from, say, a good quality to not much of a benefit from going from good quality to an excellent quality. So you're completely right, but that we have to remember that's just one study that's out there, right? So we have lots of on-farm data where we're able to show extremely good apparent efficacies of absorption, even at very, very high enrichment levels. We do know that as we enrich higher, absorption does suffer to some degree. And then again, I think you're going to start seeing some information coming out of Wisconsin that they're indicating that some of this reason for the decrease in absorption is actually because we're putting too much volume in the abomasum and causing some abomasal emptying defects and decreasing the absorption. What Don Socket has been showing is that even at a 30 bricks, if we feed a lower volume, we're getting very, very high absorption levels.
Awesome. And is the 300 grams of powder in the first 24 hours recommended for both large and small breeds?
Yeah, so the 300 grams, it's irregardless of size. That's just in the NOMS study, they found that once we hit 300 grams of IgG, and again, 300 grams is kind of minimum to hit excellent, but once we hit 300 grams of IgG, that really has a profound impact on reducing morbidity. Up from the 100 gram level, the old recommendations of 100 grams up to that 300 gram level, that really reduces mortality. So we have less dead calves as we go up in grams of IgG, but once you hit that 300 mark, you have less sick calves.
Perfect. Now, does amount of maternal colostrum produced depend on season and temperature? Colostrum
Yeah, so there's a seasonality effect. It's actually a daylight effect. So as daylight shortens, the amount of maternal colostrum that a cow will produce goes down. So we kind of have this double-edged sword where during periods of heat stress, we have low quality. And then we get into this photoperiod effect where we have low quantity. And then as we come into the spring and daylight starts to lengthen, then we typically have our best quality and our highest quantity of colostrum that's being produced on the farm.
Do you worry about changing the osmolarity of the colostrum by adding too much powder?
Yeah, we don't worry about osmolality on the first day of life. You have to think, the calf's gut at birth is physiologically much different than their gut once closure happens. So we have to think of that gut as a sieve that is actively pulling solutes into the circulation. And so, it wouldn't be uncommon for, say, a beef calf to nurse colostrum that has a Brix of 40, or 42. And so this idea of osmolality in the first day of life is really something that's been debunked numerous times because there's active transport mechanisms that are pulling those solutes into the circulation rather than relying on it being a passive process.
Perfect. And do I have to adjust the amount of powdered colostrum when I tube versus drinking colostrum of a bottle with a nipple? Or what do you recommend when tubing colostrum?
Yeah, so tubing colostrum versus bottle feeding, it really is a volume issue, not so much a solute or anything like that. So in volumes over 3 liters or 3 liters and above, we can tube feed colostrum and there's no difference in absorption. When you get to smaller volumes, like 2 liters, then we have to bottle feed it. Otherwise, they don't absorb an adequate amount of the IgGs. And the reason that is about 500 mils of that colostrum has to fill the rumen when we use an esophageal feeder. So we don't get enough spillover into the small intestine. So it's really more of a volume issue. So if we're feeding at least 2.5 to 3 liters, then feeding it via an esophageal feeder is not an issue. But in volumes less than that, we would have to bottle feed it.
Okay, perfect. And I believe I have one more, but you answered that. Don't I have to add colostrum powder with water? So I think you answered that. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to dilute it. Our goal is to raise the Brix percentage. So we never want to add water to the maternal colostrum unless we're running short on volume. Now that's going to be it's going to be a much different calculation that we have to do then. But say, we only got 2 liters of colostrum and we're trying to get to 4 liters, then we would have to more or less mix up a replacer dose of colostrum and add to the maternal colostrum. And we'd have to mix that replacer dose with water. But if we're just trying to enhance the maternal colostrum, we don't want to add any additional water.
Perfect. I think those are the questions I have, Travis.
All right, perfect.
One more comment, actually, yeah. One last minute question, which is good. Pasture-based animals show, according to your presentation, less quality colostrum. Would it be the opposite, as there is direct contact with a less controlled environment?
Yeah, so it really has to do with less control. We can't control the nutrition necessarily. Grass tends to be fairly low in energy and in some times of the year, and then breeds of grass will be low in protein as well. And so it's just not having strict control over the diet, where when we have them in total confinement, we know that every bite of feed that they take is going to be perfectly balanced. As long as they're intaking the amount that we've projected, then everything should be okay. When we use pasture-based systems, even if they're supplementing those cows with a TMR, we can't ensure what the diet looks like that they're eating out on grass.
Perfect. And have any studies been done with different qualities of water that contained much sulfur or iron that could interfere with the absorption of colostrum?
Yeah, so not so much with the individual minerals, but we do know there's been a few studies looking at salt content that can affect the colostrum. I take that back. So it doesn't necessarily affect the colostrum. Again, colostrum is, there's an active transport mechanism going on. So even if we have hard water that is high in solutes, we don't typically see issues with that. But there have been some studies looking at once we put them on milk replacer. Have dealt with farms that have put in like, they're on a milk replacer program, and then they install a new hard water or soft water system, and all of a sudden the salt content skyrockets and we have issues with the calves after day one. But again, from a colostrum day one standpoint, I'm not sure of any studies that have looked at individual interactions that are going on there. I can definitely take a look and post it in the chat or something.
Great. And can you use an 100 grams IgG pouch of colostrum replacement powder as the rip and go method?
Yeah, you can. So for example, if you were going to enrich 2 gallons of colostrum, that would be 1 bag of the 100-gram product. So a half a bag would do 1 gallon, a whole bag would do 2 gallons.
Perfect. Well, I think, yeah, I don't know if anyone in the audience have more questions. We can just wait 1 minute while I just briefly mention that our website has several resources that are available for you. We do have one section, this education, where you can find part of the videos in the how-tos in our website. So under education, you can find that information. And for veterinarians, we have a set of nice research pieces and colostrum councils published by SCCL. They're also available on our website. So please feel free to go in and browse around. We do have really good resources there for you to keep reading and learning about colostrum. So one more question here. For RID testing, what age should you be collecting the blood sample from the calf?
24 to 48 hours is ideal. That's where we get our most accurate, or the most accurate reading. Now, if you're collecting calves older than that, on the accession form, we just need to know the age, and then we have a regression curve that we can go back and calculate the true IgG. But if you can collect them 24 to 48 hours, that's the most accurate.
Okay, perfect. So thank you very much. Thanks everyone for your time. I know it's quite late in some parts of North America and the rest of the world. So thank you, Dr. White, to present this very interesting and topics that they're going to help us to go through this calving season. Cold weather is hitting North America and other parts of the world. So I know this is very valuable. And this webinar is going to be available in the next 2 weeks. I believe we're going to post that in our website. So feel free to watch it or recommend this webinar to your peers or friends. And again, the next webinar in Spanish will be next month. You're going to start seeing different posts and announcements about the webinars. So recommend this as well. It's going to be very important information in Spanish. And I think that's all for today. Travis, thank you very much and have a good night.
Thank you. Bye.